Hi, I'm Michael Morris, and I want to welcome you to the latest episode of A Window into the Amherst Regional Public Schools. And for today's episode, I'm very fortunate to have Dr. Faye Brady, who is our Director of Student Services with us, as well as our SEPAC President, Nancy Stewart, who's been president for the last couple of years, as you'll find out, to talk more about what SEPAC does, the benefits of our particular SEPAC, and the amazing impact it has on our students and families, as well as to encourage you, if you're interested, to find out more and to join in the participation that is so critical to our districts. So thank you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us. Thank you.
Absolutely. So education markets tend to have a lot of acronyms, and sometimes that can get confusing to the general public. So I'd like to start by just asking, what is SEPAC? What does it stand for? And more importantly, what services are offered by our SEPAC locally?
Okay, sure. So SEPAC is a Special Education Parent Advisory Council, and it's an organization that exists across the state. It's something that exists by law. So every public school should have one in place. And the purpose behind it is to really support families, and we also really want to try to support staff because we're really all on the same team. We're here to support the students, we're here to support the families, and we're here to support the staff to make this really a great learning environment for all kids.
Yeah. And just to follow up, we'll get into this I know a little bit later, but what are some services that SEPACs typically offer for the parents in the community that they work in? It could be for either of you.
So I'll jump in and then
Sure.
please add. So
Yeah.
I think when a district is fortunate, like we are, to have a wonderful parent advisory council, the supports that are available are networking for families. So when families have questions or concerns, that there may be an opportunity that can be best met by talking to another family. SEPAC can offer a place for families to go, as well as we're lucky that we have workshops throughout the course of the year for families, and just routine collaboration with district personnel so that our programs and supports and services are best designed to meet the needs of our students.
Yeah, I think the other thing that I would add to it, Mike, is that the other piece that we serve is we're an outlet to the school committee, in that when we have programming or if we have policies that are being looked at, the school committee will partner with us to make sure that we're really thinking about this population and how the needs are being met. And I'm excited to say over the past couple of years, we've really had some great growth in working with the school committee. This year we have Phoebe Hazard and Peter Demling, who are our liaisons, and I must say they dedicate an awful lot of time, as you know. They spend a lot of time at a table with you, but there are a lot of different work groups that they belong to, and we've have had a few meetings already this year, and we've met outside of meeting, and they've been really receptive to hearing about what's working really well and things that need to improve.
Yeah.
So
I think what was touched on by both of you that I want to emphasize too is that the special education process can be really confusing for families. Mm-hmm. It's very bureaucratic in how it's set up by the state and the federal government, and it's so wonderful that we have a SEPAC that can, as well as administration, that can both support with different angles families who may be encountering that process for the first time and may have questions, because it is a lot for parents to understand the testing and the testing results and the process of what initial meetings are, what annual reviews are. I found kind of different roles that I've had in the school district that it's a really challenging process, for everyone, but particularly the kind of the legalistic nature of it is hard to sort through, that we're talking about children. And I think one of the things we endeavor to do as a district is to focus our attention on the children, but there are those other pieces that come along with that process. So thank you both for your work on that.
I think I'd also like to share too that, to your point, is we're going to be having a basic rights workshop upcoming in November, and people can find that information on the school's website, and that our workshops are always free, and we offer childcare to make it accessible to people. We just ask that we know a week in advance. And we really work to make the workshop being meaningful for people who attend. And it's not just for families. We also recognize the fact that we may have some people on our staff who may not be well versed in the process. I have extended an invitation to people on school committee, and I'm encouraging people to come from school committee so they can learn more about the process and really appreciate what it might feel like to walk in the shoes of a family member who's going through the process. But I also recognize, Mike, that this workshop is only once a year. So that's another thing that we make available. People can reach us by email or call us if they're midway through the process, and we can put them in touch with resources that will help them.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that support and service that you offer to our communities. You sort of touched on this, but thinking about student service departments and SEPACs, how do you find the collaboration? What are some examples perhaps of projects or other ways that you collaborate both from the parent network as well as the staff and administrative network as it relates to special education?
So if I can, before we share some specifics, if I can just say from my perspective as the director, I think one of the things having SEPAC that often doesn't really get talked about is for an administrator in this department to try to do the work of taking this leadership and implementing things that are effective without having the lens directly from parents. You can't really do the job well. So I think that's part of the overall piece of our ongoing collaboration, is to hearing from Nancy and other people in SEPAC what we're doing that's working well, and maybe other ways that we need to adapt how we're communicating, what we're offering that can be more effective to bring us together as partners. So I think that's just a place that we don't often really talk about that. But in terms of other supports and things we do on a routine basis that we have already planned for this year. We have workshops, and maybe Nancy, you can talk about a couple of them that we're planning already for this year. This is October, and October is Disability Awareness Month. So we are trying to do a lot to make people both in the schools and our families aware of how disabilities influence and impact our youth in schools and their access to education. I don't know if you want to add some other things.
Sure. I mean, the other pieces we've created this brochure, and our hope is that whenever anybody goes to an IEP meeting, that this is something that's offered to them, because this is like a nice snapshot about what we are and how we're here to support families, and it lists lots of the workshops that we do. We have the meet and greet coming up soon, where we meet with families, and it's one of our most casual workshops of the year. The opportunity for people to come in and just interact with different staff and get to know each other. We offer the basic rights, and we hope to be able to offer that in Spanish as well. And we have a series of workshops that is coming up as well. 4 workshops are going to be talking about autism. And we have a transition resource fair that's going to be planned, and perhaps one of my most favorite things that we do is at the end of the year, where we have a recognition program for everybody who's had a positive impact on a student who may be on an IEP or a 504.
I think I've been to every one.
You have.
3 years,
I appreciate
maybe?
that.
Yeah. And it's always a wonderful event. And I think one of the things that's challenging, we have so many educators in our community, and education tends to be a field where we don't do as much awards or celebration. I think that's not why anyone goes in to be an educator, is for that. There's no all-star team, right? There are things that might happen in other fields. And I think the attendance is so high at that event, not because there's for the star, but because it's so personal. That the way you and other SEPAC officers have organized it, where really personal statements made by students or families to honor the impact that educators have had. And that's why educators go into it, right? They go in for that rewarding feeling of making a difference in children's lives. And that's really a wonderful kind of like capsule of doing that in an incredibly meaningful way. So thank you and other folks I know who are also involved in setting that up. And it's nice that we've had school committee members come the last couple of years. We needed a bigger venue, right? That was a good problem to have from when we did it in the Pelham community room.
Ran out of space,
these are good things. So I'm glad that you highlighted that one, because I know I've heard directly from educators who have been honored there how meaningful it was to have that process, and their expectations of what the ceremony was going to be and what it actually is so much about what they do on a daily basis. And sometimes those two things don't always line up, and they really do for that event. So
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm hoping this year too that we can take it a little bit step further. You know, we've had 2 students in the past as well be recognized for the roles that they've played in their school and being really supportive of kids. And I'm hoping that we can work together to really get people to recognize that in a more formal way about how other kids support kids and are there and help them advocate for for their classmates. So I'm hoping this year that we have a few more students that can be recognized, because I know that in our schools we're doing great work. We really are. I mean, we have mentoring programs that happen in the school. I know that there's a mentoring program happening in Fort River, where we have some older students working with younger students and working on lots of positive things. And I think we need to celebrate what our kids do as well as all the hard work that our staff puts in. And it's led by our staff.
Yeah, no, it's so true, and it reminds me, last year we had a student at Wildwood who decided to work with teachers in one of the special education programs there to create a program that's sort of analogous to Best Buddies program at the elementary level. And while the staff certainly did incredible amounts of work, it was so neat that it was a student who talked to their sibling and said they had this at the secondary level, and she said, well, why don't we have this at our school? We should do this. We have students who would benefit from that, and it was such a wonderful thing. And as I talked to other superintendents in the area, it's really unique to have that program at elementary level, and it was really incredibly successful. I mean, I got to attend a couple of those parts of those meetings last year where the students were really setting the agenda and trying to figure out activities that would relate to a broad spectrum of students from kindergarten to 6th grade with special needs, and it was hugely successful. But I think honoring the students is critical as well. We're fortunate to have the students we have.
We are.
Yeah.
And it helps to build, I think, the community in our schools that I think most staff really try to build every day. But it needs to go beyond the staff who are building that, and that everyone's taking ownership of creating that community where everyone is learning together and maybe be learning in different ways, but that all the children in the schools are students and they can all work together to support each other. So it's really nice community building.
I was thinking too, the other way that we collaborate, because we talk to each other quite frequently, but there's also which is great, which is great for families. If I ever needed to reach her, I can get in touch with her. But the other way that we collaborate is like on a monthly basis. We have a board meeting. As with everything we do, it's open to the public, and we really would love more people to attend. We post that online as well too. We send out email. And I'd really encourage people, whether or not they have a child on an IEP or not, I encourage people to come and, learn. We post our agenda online, and, we also have school committee members, as I mentioned earlier, with Phoebe and Peter coming and attending those, but those are held monthly.
And at those meetings, it's a time for, other than some topics that may be on the agenda, just to update people as to what are some I know the big word in education, initiatives, things that we're working on in the department to better design our programs and services, where we are in those processes, because otherwise people don't necessarily know all of what we're thinking about and what we're doing, and don't have a form of which to give us feedback so that we can address things in maybe a different way. So
think about when we had one of our first meetings at the beginning of the year, where you were trying to go through and do an update about the stuff you had done over the summer. I did not allot enough time for that. I mean, there was
it's a lot.
The team had really done so much work over the summer with the safety. I mean, there's just so much training and things being developed that I didn't allot enough time for that. So
and to your point, Nancy, about whether you have a student who has a IEP or 504 or not, I think my belief is the things that we do right that meet the needs of students with special needs really benefit all students. In my teaching career, I taught almost every year with Joan Zukas in a co-teaching relationship where we had a certain set of students that had special needs, and then the majority of students did not. And what I learned from her, I was a general ed and Joan was a special ed teacher, is that the things I learned from her and her strategies were benefiting our students with and without special needs, our students who were incredibly strong skills, our students who are struggling weak skills, regardless of whether they had special needs or not. And so I think it is I'm glad you raised that point, because I think sometimes because of the title, and it is focused on students with special needs, people may not necessarily think of, well, that actually benefits my child, or something that I want to be involved in.
Yeah. And the other thing I think people should be aware of too, in case they're not, is that just about 20% of our population are on an IEP or 504. So if we really just stop and think about it,
Right.
there are quite a few people that this impacts.
Yes.
So the more involvement we can have from people, the better off I think our community would be.
And just to go one step further with that when we talk about the percent of students, and one of the things that we, I think, do really well in Amherst and are still continuing to grow in how we do it so well, is when we try to include students of many different learning styles in the general education classroom. You just spoke about how years ago you were co-teaching with a special educator, and that is something that we continue to really grow and develop our personnel as to how to take educators with different areas of expertise and put them together to share and learn from each other, so that most students can spend most of their day in the general education environment with different types of instructional design to meet all those students' needs. And that's exciting. It's working really well when we get feedback from our families and our students and our faculty on that as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, skipping around a little bit, it is October, which is Disability Awareness Month. People may view this later, but would you mind talking a little bit about the kind of public campaign that SEPAC has worked on to highlight the month and the students? You mentioned that 1 in 5 students roughly in our district, which is pretty similar to state averages, has this ability. And what has SEPAC done, and what is the response that you received?
A little bit ago, we had worked with a group of people who put together a PowerPoint so that we could really highlight that people are capable of many, many different things, and they shouldn't be defined by their disability. So we have a visual campaign out amongst all the schools. It's a visual sign, something different. It catches people's attention, and it just highlights other people who some people may consider famous, or some people may look at as idols, to see that anything is really possible for them. So, and it was great. You know, we worked on this project for a long time, a very long time, and it came out great. And we had input from families, we had input from students, and we were able to get it in front of a few teachers. And, next year, we're open to new suggestions and changes. And I recall when we were at a workshop last year, just getting some student feedback about how much it meant to some people to be able to see that. It was really worth doing it again and keeping it out there a little bit longer, and getting it in front of all of the schools. We're really proud of that.
Yeah, I think as well you should be. One piece of student feedback that I thought was really interesting that I received last year, I'm not sure we've even shared this with you, was that it made that the student shared with me, it made that student's experiences visible in a way that was really hard to do prior to that campaign, that people were talking about it. And he expressed being able to talk about his disability much more freely, because it opened doors of conversation that without the visual, and they're visually quite striking, the signs. He expressed that he'd been in the district a long time, and it hadn't been as visible to him and his experience until those signs went up, and really engendered conversations with his peers that he hadn't had before. So I really offer my gratitude for that, because the feedback I received was incredibly positive as well.
Yeah. Our families in SEPAC doing all that was a lot of time and effort, and that was something that without a strong partnership and collaboration that we would never as a district probably have had the time to create and develop in the same way. So although we may teach self-advocacy to our students so that they can be comfortable with what is their learning style and who they are and how to advocate, without that partnership, that these beautiful signs are displayed in front of schools, that generates a really open conversation. It just wouldn't have the same meaning. So
and just to
thank them.
Absolutely. On that, it reminds me that the student's final comment to me was that he didn't have to bring up the conversation.
Yeah,
right. So in prior experiences, he'd be the one talking about it, and because the signs were so visible and so striking, other people were bringing up the conversation to him, and then he had an entry point that didn't have to be about his own experience exclusively, but it was much more broadly about disability awareness, and that was what felt really unique to him. So people may be watching this and get excited and want to be involved in SEPAC matters, and who should be involved in SEPAC, and what might people be able to do to help if they watch this and get interested and say, what are my next steps?
Yeah, I would welcome anybody to reach me by email. Yeah. And the email is sepac@arps.org. And they can
spell that out.
SEPAC at arps.org.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, and the information is also on the website. We have a Facebook page that people could go on and just put in Amherst SEPAC and follow us so they can stay up to date with the events, because SEPAC, unlike some other areas, I don't know everybody who's on an IEP or 504 for privacy reasons. So I rely on the school to assist me with emailing and reaching out to families, and that's worked fine. But if a family really has a concern or is willing to help, they should reach me through email, and we can find something for people to do. We have a long list of things. We're fortunate enough to help support the community by being on different committees. We help with interviewing. We help with putting on workshops. We create the workshops. So really, I honestly think that we could find a way for anybody to help in any manner.
Yeah. Almost any day of the year, I think, if people wanted to ask just what can they do, there's always something to do. And other than reaching out directly to SEPAC, because parents are often in their children's schools and talking with their teacher, but anybody in the school can help direct them to how to reach out to SEPAC. They certainly can call my office at any time, and if they just want to talk to Nancy, they don't even have to give a reason. That is a connection and available to anyone at any time.
And if people did want to get in touch with you in terms of your office, what would be the best way?
Sure.
Or the email? What's the best way for them
They
to get in touch?
can email or call. If they want to email, it's bradyf@arps.org, or they can call my office directly at 362-1834. And I operate with an open door policy. Somebody may ask, well, what do you want to talk to Faye about, and why do you want to come in? And someone can answer that specifically, or they can just say, I'd really need to talk to Faye, and they're welcome to come in.
Great. Well, thank you so much for both being here. I think one thing that I know, but I think was evidenced in this half hour, was that you talk a lot, right? It seems very natural, and I really appreciate that collaboration. It's what we aim to do. This is pretty specific in terms of SEPAC, but with all of our families, is parents and guardians are our children's first teacher, and they're going to be their teacher longer probably than we will get to enjoy them in our district, and this is the type of collaboration that we really want to have. So I appreciate both of your work individually and collectively to support our students and our families. And it makes a huge difference. And I think it's been very well known, again, when I talk to other districts, having this level of strength in our SEPAC and this level of collaboration between our SEPAC and our administration is not regular or not always typical in every district. And when it works, like I believe it is now, tremendous amount of power and energy that come from it. So thank you both for being here and sharing your experiences, and thank you all for watching Window into the Amherst Regional Public Schools, and we'll be back with another episode soon. Thank you.